Welcome to Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon video series. This one, how to buy a used boat off Boat Trader. We're going to talk about the what to look out for. We're going to talk about some scams that you may find on Boat Trader. Craigslist has the most scams, but there's still some issues on Boat Trader that you need to be aware of. Common issues to avoid on Boat Trader, options to consider, how to avoid someone else's headache. That's a big one. The most important must do inspection before buying any used boat, especially on Boat Trader, financing and insurance tips, and a free gift at the end. So that's what we're going to cover. This is a stat that I found on Craigslist, some research that was done. 1 in 7 boats on Craigslist has a major issue or was an outright scam. So, an issue with the title, the boat was salvaged and it's being sold as a clean title. It had warranty or insurance claims on the boat that weren't disclosed, or it was just an outright scam. They didn't have authorization to sell that boat. It wasn't their boat. There was something off with the transaction. Now, like I said, Boat Trader is much less of those types of issues, but there are some out there that you need to be aware of. So how do you spot a scam? Well, the first is if they won't allow phone contact or there's poor grammar. Think about the Nigerian prince scheme where you've got a huge amount of money that's waiting for you from the Nigerian prince. Those are red flags. It's not this is definitely a scam, but these are things just to keep your guard up if you spot one or more of those that this may be an issue. I want to be a little bit more careful about giving any money up front, even in an escrow account. There's been stories of people that put money into what they think is an escrow account, and it's actually just a dummy website set up to look like an escrow account that just goes right into the scammer's hands. If you want to use the escrow route, you pick the escrow service. Escrow.com is a bigger one that's very reputable, and make sure that you're in control of that as the buyer. Won't allow you to inspect the boat in person. Oh, it's, you can't get access to it. That's a red flag, not, something that I would encourage you to never buy a boat without inspecting it. But it's a red flag. No title or a title is in a different name. There's some sort of mismatch on titles, which we'll talk about how to avoid that. It has water damage or a sank and wasn't disclosed. I'm going to show you what to look out for, direct you to another video that will help there as well. Or they won't allow you to do a sea trial or a test drive. Um, could be a red flag for maybe there's something wrong with the boat that they don't want you to find out about. So how do you make sure that you know that you're getting the right boat, the title and the boat match up? Well, there's a HIN, a hull identification number. It's a number that's on the transom of every boat, usually on the transom on the starboard side. And you can see that it will have the manufacturer's identification code. So with that, you can make sure that is this a Sea Ray? Is it a Sea Ray? And you'll be able to tell that. You can just type it in online. Just go to MIC and then type in your code. And there's several sites that have those all listed. The hull serial number, so you know what the boat manufacturer said is the number of this hull. The date of manufacture, and the most important is the year model. A lot of people don't know what year their boats are, so you want to make sure that if they tell you it's a 2012, that it matches up and is truly a 2012. Now, on a boat, you may have multiple serial numbers you need to check. This is a stern drive, a Mercruiser stern drive, but an inboard or an IO or stern drive will also have its own serial number, and you want to match that up with what you have on the paperwork. So there's three numbers. There's an engine serial number, there's a transom serial number, and there is a drive serial number. So you want to check all three of those. On some of the older boats out there, they may be worn out. Those stickers may be long gone or they may be illegible. Just do the best that you can to match those up. The outboard, much more important. It's if unless there was a replacement of that engine, um, they're usually going to be okay. An outboard, they can be stolen. They're easy to take on and off, and it's easier to pull some funny business on an outboard than it is with the stern drive. So you want to check the model number. Make sure that if it says it's a 150, that the model number matches up that it's a 150. The serial number, make sure that this is the proper serial number. If there's multiple engines on the boat, each engine will have its own serial number. And then C, the date, the year manufactured. Now, you want to watch out for this because just because a boat's a 2010 doesn't mean the engine is a 2010. So sometimes even on a brand new boat, the boat will be a 2010, the engine will be a 2009. So you want to check that so you know exactly what you're getting, okay? If you have a trailer, here's the third one. You want to check that VIN number, the vehicle identification number on the trailer. I've got a video on this. You can check how to buy a trailer, and I go into detail of all the information on this little placard there. But the serial number will be on the placard. It's usually on the inside of the trailer up front, and there may be one on the rear of the trailer as well that has the same placard. Just match that up, and you may have a title for the boat, for the motor, and the trailer, depending on your state and the type of boat that you're buying. So you want to make sure you match all of those up, because if you have a mismatch on the name, on a serial number, on exactly what you think it is and what the title says it is, you may have a major issue getting that resolved. So you want to know that up front. So we're going to talk mainly about deck boats, bow riders. Some of this will apply to pontoons and aluminum fishing boats and cruisers and different things. But we're mainly going to focus on the deck boat and the bow rider. I've got a great video for first-time boaters on how to find the right boat, and I talk you through all the styles. If you're not sure exactly what you're looking at, go check that out. The link will be down in the description. You can check that out. And we also talk about stern drives versus outboards versus inboards versus jet boats. That video is also down in the description, and you can find it at the boatbuyersecretweapon.com website as well. But there's some great videos to help you find that. Options. As we looking at this style of boat, you may find that there's some options that you might want, but you say, oh, I can add those after the fact, or I can change that. Well, that may be true, but it also may be more expensive than you expected. So a sun pad or a walkthrough, that's usually a decision that you'll need to make. Do I like this style of the walkthrough, or do I like a full sun pad that you have to step up and over, but you've got a nice flat surface to lay out? That's impossible really to change on a boat. So you want to make sure you know that up front. A bimini top and canvas cover. Well, those are things that they seem like, oh, I can easily add a bimini top. I can easily get a canvas cover. That can't be too much. But the reality is a bimini may be $500 to $2,000 depending on the size of your boat, maybe more, and how you want it set up. A canvas cover may be a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 depending on the type of cover that you're looking for, the size of your boat. So those are things that you want to check out, and you want to know that, hey, I really need a bimini top. So if you find a boat that's $1,000 more, but it's got a bimini, well, that may actually be a better deal, depending on the other criteria. A wakeboard tower. Wakeboard towers are something that I'll encourage you to buy a boat that has a factory tower, because that's going to be backplated, it's going to be installed properly, and really the best way to install a tower is when the boat's not put together yet and you can get to everything underneath. The way they build a boat, it's much easier and sturdier that way. But wake towers can be $2,000 to $15,000 or more, depending on the type of boat that you're looking at. And if you install a tower on a boat aftermarket, or the previous owner did, there can be cracks, and it can cause damage to the structure of the boat, and it may even tear out, which now you got a big old hole in the boat because you couldn't backplate it properly, to get it secured the way it needs to be secured. So look out for that, especially if it's got a tower that was not factory installed. You just want to check: are there cracks? Is there something going on? And make sure you maybe shake it and rattle it to make sure it's secure. And a head compartment porta potty, if it doesn't have a head compartment, well, it's tough to add a compartment. If it doesn't have the porta potty in that compartment, that's easy enough to add for 100, $150. But you want to know what you're getting up front. The inspection. My rule of thumb when buying a used boat from a private seller or a dealer, on Boat Trader, is I want you to know what you've got. Every used boat has an issue, okay? There's not a used boat out there that doesn't have at least one flaw, even if it's just 6 months old. They've all got flaws. I want you to know what the flaws are, know what it's going to take to fix it, or be okay with the flaw before you make the decision to write that check. Okay, so the first one is checking the floor. If you're buying a boat that's older than the early 2000s, it's likely that it has just a plywood floor, maybe marine grade plywood, but that can rot. It can get soft. I've seen boats that you step in it and everything feels right, but you bounce around a little bit and you get a little bit of a spongy feeling to it up in the bow, around the bases of the seats, around the ski locker, or in the back of the boat where people board. You just want to check to make sure that's solid. If it's not, it can be a costly error. If you pull up that floor and you see that the stringers are starting to get rotten as well, that's like the structure of the boat. Well, now you've got a major repair that's expensive, that's dirty, and that's difficult. Okay. The fiberglass bottom. Look under the boat. Make sure you know what's going on. Yeah, you got to crawl under there and it may be dirty and nasty, but if there's a big gouge on the bottom of the boat, you may not have seen that. If there's blisters on the bottom of the boat, you may not have seen it. Now, sometimes it's cosmetic and not a big deal. A scratch on the gel coat where you can see a little bit of black through, I'm not real concerned about that in most cases. It can be fixed. It may not even need to be fixed. It's just like a cosmetic scratch. Blisters, that tells you that the boat's been left in the water for an extended period of times. It's just a cosmetic issue, not a big deal, but it tells me I need to be more cautious on my inspection of the lower units of the drive systems. The electronics, the stereos, the lights, gauges, and switches. Go through everything. You want to know what's not working and what is working, what you have, what you don't have. Just because there's a switch on the dash doesn't mean that that option is there. Most manufacturers put all the switches on every boat and they just leave the wires blank if it doesn't have the underwater lights or if it doesn't have the windlass or whatever. The upholstery and the canvas. We talked about how expensive it can be. The upholstery, if it's got mold and mildew, maybe try to test a spot to see if you can get it clean to see if you're going to be happy with the end result. Know what you've got before you make that decision. Hatches and latches. Look in every compartment, every crack, every crevice, every nook, every cranny, so that you can see maybe there's an issue that will pop up when you open one of those compartments that you wouldn't have known about had you not opened it. So go through everything. Wiring and corrosion, especially in the saltwater environment, you want to check to make sure that that corrosion hasn't gotten so bad that maybe you're going to have an issue with your wiring. If you have a wiring issue, those can be very difficult, expensive, and time consuming to figure out. So you just want to check to make sure those wires all look in good condition. There's no corrosion. There's no wearing of the covering. That's going to cause a short. It can be a nightmare. And then you want to ask the question, how old is the fuel and when was the last time this boat was ran? Some of the boats you'll find on Boat Trader have been sitting for 2 or 3 or 4 years and haven't had much, if any, use. And they talk about it like it's a great thing. Um, the reality is, mechanical things need to run to keep that oil going through the system, to keep them exercised and lubricated. It's much better to have it run on a consistent basis than to sit for a long period of time. Old fuel, if it's over a year or two old, I would encourage you to get rid of that fuel, which can be costly depending on where you're at for doing it properly, which I encourage you to do, versus running it through that engine, which could cause damage if there's debris, if there's phase separation, there's water in the fuel, and sometimes that can cause issues. And if the boat hasn't been run, you want to find out when's the last time the oil and gear lube and impeller have been changed, and you want to know those things. The most important part on most used boats is going to be the engine. Sometimes the engine can be nearly the entire value of the boat. So you want to know what you've got. What are the engine hours? If it doesn't have an hour gauge on it, well, from 2000 and newer, typically you can hook them up to a computer and you can find out what those hours are. Not on every engine, but on most of them that are newer than 2000s. Check the oil and the fluids. If they told you that it was just changed and you open it up and you check it on a white rag and it's black, well, now other things that they tell you may not be the truth either. So you want to check those. Make sure that the fluid levels are proper. Otherwise, that may be an indication that there's a leak you need to look for. If the gear lube is really low, well, I'd be looking down in the engine compartment and on the hoses. I'd be looking for some leaks there. That may be indication of an issue. Compression, the most important inspection that you can do. Do not skip this one. Is to check how strong those cylinders are firing. You can check compression down below. There's a video on how to check compression. There's also a link to a compression gauge if you want to check it yourself, if you're mechanically inclined. Or you can hire a mechanic to pull those engine hours and to check compression and do an engine inspection for a couple $100 probably, depending on where you're at. But that compression is going to tell you that the engine's firing as strong as it should be, and that everything is even, that each cylinder is firing within a 10% range. So it's that even power as well. Check the prop condition. Is there any big dents or gouges in the props? And then spin that prop and make sure that there's no wobble. That would be an indication of a bent prop shaft, and that can be a major issue or cause major issues down the road. Plus, the vibration is uncomfortable. The drive condition, especially if you know that boat's been in the water, you want to check to make sure there's no corrosion. Check that the anodes are in good condition. You want to check the bellows, which are kind of the rubber boots that go around up on the transom. Um, just make sure that those are nice and soft and supple. If they're dry, if they've got cracks in it, well, now water's going to get into that drive system. Your gimbal bearing's probably going to have some issues and need to be replaced, and that can be an expensive repair. So you just want to know what you've got there. Also, take that drive and shake it a little bit. Make sure that that transom is solid, that there's no rot going on back there, that there's nothing off back there. That's going to be an indication of some major repairs and major expenses. Once you've gone through the boat, titles match up, everything's good there. You've gone through the boat and it looks good. You say, all right, let's put it on the water. If everything goes well here, I'm buying the boat. Start that boat cold. Start those engines cold. Make sure that listen, do they take a long time to fire up or do they fire right up? Listen at idle. Just have that boat sit there at idle. How does it sound? Is it choking on and off, or is it just nice and smooth? Now, I'm going to assume that you're a competent boat driver. If you're not, get a competent driver with you. Be safe, understand the conditions, watch out for all that stuff, other boaters' obstructions. Idle out, get in the open water, go from idle to wide open throttle, and go wide open throttle for a minute or two, and just feel how that boat responds. Is it nice and smooth? Does it sound right? Is there anything that the vibrations, anything you feel that's off? I go through this in complete detail in a video how to buy a used boat, and I'm also got a video how to demo a boat the right way, where I go through all of this so you can see for yourself. Once you do that, come back to about 3/4 throttle. Be safe. If your boat goes 200 miles an hour, maybe you need to come back a little bit more. If it's a tiny boat, maybe you need to come back a little bit more. Do it at a safe speed, but about 3/4 throttle for most boats, and do some tight turns to the port, to the starboard, left and right. Make sure that it feels right. Make sure that it's not cavitating. There's nothing going on that feels off or unsafe. Do those turns, hit the waves, make sure that everything sounds solid, that you're not hearing anything that's broken or causes an indication that you want to inspect it in more detail. As you're cruising at 3/4 throttle, adjust that trim. Play with the trim. Is it working properly? When does it start cavitating? What's too high? And then go all the way down. Feel how the boat responds. Once you do that, come back to neutral, and just sitting there, go in gear and out of gear. Nothing more than idle speed. So in gear, 1, 2, 3, neutral, 1, 2, 3, reverse, 1, 2, 3, neutral, 1, 2, 3. Do that a couple of times, and you want to just listen. How is it shifting? Is it easy? Is it hard? What's it feel like? and then look for, if it's an outboard, look for water spitting out of that little pee hole. You can see that in the image there. If it's a nice steady flow of water while you're under load, it may be just a dribble or you're sitting at idle, but as you're underway, you want to make sure there's a nice steady stream, that your temperature is in good shape. That tells you that that impeller is likely in good condition. Although I would encourage you, if you don't have service records of the last time the oil, gear lube, and impeller were changed, I encourage you just to do it right out of the gate. That way you're not going to get caught in a situation where you buy the boat, the impeller tears up, and now you've got an expensive repair or a completely worthless engine. On the outboard, just pay attention to that temperature gauge. Make sure that you're running in good range. It tells you that you're picking up the water and the boat hasn't been overheating in the past likely. If you have a boat with a trailer, you want to do this with the boat off the trailer. Check the winch stand and the straps, the lights, the bunks, the axle and bearing, the tires. I do a complete video on this. If you're looking for a boat with a trailer, you want to make sure you inspect the trailer and watch that video, because there's some things that a lot of people overlook, and they kind of forget about the trailer. It's an afterthought. They're all excited about the boat, but without a trailer, and a trailer can be expensive, $2,000 to $15,000 depending on the type of boat that you're looking. Sometimes it can be tough to find the right trailer depending on the boat that you're looking at. So watch that video. Financing, there's a video on financing as well that you can check out. If you're buying a used boat from a private individual, I encourage you to look at credit unions, marine lenders, and your national bank. If you're buying from a dealer, check that dealer's lender as well. Choose the one that's best suited for you. And again, watch that video that you can see at Boat Buyer Secret Weapon on financing. Same thing on insurance. There's a great video on insurance, but typically for a 17 to 26-foot fiberglass runabout, bow rider, deck boat, cuddy cabin, $500 to $1,200 a year, depending on the age, the cost of the boat, the speed of the boat, your driving record and credit history, and where you're located is going to have an impact. Again, that insurance video will walk you through to not only tell you how to get the cheapest insurance, but also what coverage to make sure you do have, so that you don't get in a situation where there's a claim and you get kind of screwed, which happens. Boat History Report, this is a source that I encourage you to check out when you're investing $5, 10, $50,000 on a used boat. I think they're like $50. There's a link in the description. You can plug in the hull identification number on that boat, and it will pull up the history of that boat. It's pretty accurate. It's not 100% by any means, but it's very accurate, and it's a nice little insurance policy that there's nothing that you didn't discover in the full inspection that I just walked you through. But it's kind of like a Carfax for boats, and I encourage you to do that. I do get a little bit of a referral fee for that. It's just a couple bucks, but it's something that that I think is very valuable on a used boat. I mentioned there would be a free gift at the end. You can get our Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon Toolkit. It just walks you through the whole process, questions to ask boat dealers and private sellers, how to maximize your trade, get the best loan, the best insurance, how to demo a boat the right way, and how to get the right boat at the right price. You can pick up that free at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/toolkit. I encourage you to subscribe to the channel, like this video if you found it valuable, leave a comment if you found it valuable or have other questions. That helps get this video seen by more people so we can help more people find the right boat at the best price. And there's also some additional videos to check out here that you may find helpful and valuable. Thanks for watching.